Hey there, Daleen Bickle here, and today I'm going to share with you some things you should not do when writing your book. Because no matter how many books you may have published to date, there is inevitably something somewhere within each book that you wish you had done differently. Usually it's an error or omission of some sort, like a typo, or maybe you forgot to thank someone that you really meant to thank because they were pivotal in helping your book come to completion. Or maybe there was an actual data error. Maybe you wrote the wrong statistic or cited the wrong source, right? Well, regardless of what it is, it's never fun to discover it too late, right? It's already published, it's already out there, people have already read it. And while we can't guarantee that we will have an error-free book, we can minimize those errors and sell more books post-launch by not doing certain things. So you're going to want to watch this video the whole way to the end so that you get all of those tips. But first, I want to encourage you to hit that subscribe button below so that you don't miss out on future videos like this to help you become a more productive and polished self-published author. All right, let's dive in. There are 10 things that I'm going to share with you that you should not do when writing a book. The first thing that you should not do is ignore the marketplace. So when we have a new book idea, we're very excited about it and we tend to just start writing. And yes, we want to write those ideas down before we forget them. But in addition to that, we want to do some research. So, what is your competition and how will your book be different from theirs? So, sometimes people will be like, well, I know one or two authors in my genre, and they leave it at that. But I encourage you to really dig deeper and look at a number of different books in your genre and see what how they differentiate from each other and what are similar. Because audiences who read specific genres expect specific things, right? A person reading a thought development book, a personal growth book, some kind of business book is looking for something completely different than someone who is reading a suspense book, right? Or a historical novel. There are different um, expectations that need to be met while also standing out and being unique, right? That will help you sell more books. So be sure to pay attention to your competitors and also figure out how you're going to distinguish yourself. And how you'll distinguish yourself is not only in the content of your book, but how you promote it, what words you're using on the back cover blurb, in your speaking engagements, all of that. It's very important. All right. So, what else should you not do? The second thing you should not do when writing your book is seek revenge. So, this is primarily an issue with memoir and autobiography writers. I once had an individual come up to me and she wanted me to help her write and self-publish her book. And her sole reason for writing the book was to put her ex-husband in his place. And I quickly said, no, I was not the right person to help her because no one wants to read a book like that, right? It makes the reader very uncomfortable and it does not paint the author in a very good light. So make sure you're writing for the correct reasons. And I do want to note that this can kind of happen within the business world as well. Sometimes when we are critiquing someone in our book, it can come across very heavy-handed. So you want to state your arguments and frame them in a positive light, like focus on your argument and much less on your competitor or the other person that you're talking negatively about, right? You do not want to open yourself up to a lawsuit about libel, defamation, anything like that. So you want to be very careful about the words that you use and your motivation for writing. The third thing you want to avoid when writing your book is being overly descriptive. Okay. Yes, it's important to let the reader get a vision of what you're talking about. You need to describe some things, but you don't need to spend paragraphs describing things. Okay. And that leads into number 4, the fourth thing you should not do, which is the opposite, which is be too vague, right? You want to make sure that your reader understands your message, your concept, your story. Make sure that they're able to follow along. Because if they have too many questions, if it's too confusing or too vague, they will stop reading, right? And you want to make sure that you let them know what the next step is that you want them to take. This is really important for business books, or any type of personal growth that you want a reader to take. You want to make sure that you give them very clear action steps and encourage them to take those next steps. All right. Number 5, the fifth thing you should not do when writing your book is use lots of adverbs. So we can absolutely write everything out in that first draft. It's called a messy first draft for a reason, because we're just throwing our ideas, our thoughts, everything out there because we don't want to lose momentum. We don't want to lose really good nuggets that are hidden within all of the other fluff around it, right? So it's okay to write everything down in that first draft. But before your book goes to publication, I really encourage you to go back through and replace adverbs with strong, powerful verbs. So these are just, random examples. So let's say we wrote that she ate quickly. We could replace that with she gulped down her food, right? Or maybe if we're talking about a bird, the bird glided smoothly in the air. Well, we could replace that with the bird soared, right? We already know it's in the air. And soar, just, you know, changing adverbs, replacing adverbs with strong verbs, it allows us to paint a picture for the reader. And it's word pictures for the readers, right? It's a visual. It's amazing how just a little switch of words can really make your message much more clear and much more attractive. All right, the sixth thing that you should not do when writing your book is omit citations, okay? So I think we were all drilled in school that we have to cite our sources, and we know this. And I think we do this very well when we're writing academic style books or briefs. We know that we can incorporate the citation if it's a very short one within the text. Like if we only have one or two throughout the whole book, we can just incorporate them in the text within parentheses, right? Or we can use footnotes, or we can use endnotes, or if we have a lot, if we're very heavy with our citations, then we should use a bibliography, right? And so we know all of that. But I think where we as writers have sometimes gone wrong is by not properly citing quotes. Okay, I see this a lot in social media and also in books. A lot of authors like to start their chapters with a quotation from a famous individual, right? And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's a great, visual for starting a chapter. But I want you to dig deeper and make sure you know exactly where that individual said that, whether it was a speech, whether it was in a book, whether it was a newspaper article, whatever it was, know the original source. This is really, really important because if you're just taking quotes from Goodreads or a site like Brainy Quote, those are just repositories that allow individual readers to add comments and add quotes. Like they are not Goodreads and Brainy Quote and places like those. They are not vetting those quotes. They are not going out and making sure that those are actual words that the individual said. It's just readers attributing words to those people, right? So I encourage you, if you're going to use a quote from a famous person, you should know their exact source. So dig some research, know where it's at. Okay. Also, to avoid all of that, if you really don't want to do the research, create your own words, like create your own power statements, right? Those noteworthy quotes that you want people to remember. So, yeah, you can do that as an alternative, right? Number 7, the seventh thing that you should not do when writing a book is write without feedback. It's important to have a critique partner, some beta readers, someone who is analyzing your writing, okay, to make it better. Now, you want critique partners to be honest, but you also want to find ones that just don't constantly belittle or berate, right? You want to strike a balance and find a supportive critique partner because ideally they're writers themselves. They understand how our egos can be wounded, but you also want them to tell the truth because you want to get feedback from a reader's perspective, right? Okay. So be open to criticism, but make sure that it's constructive criticism that you're receiving. You don't need to be lambasted and belittled. So if that's happening in your critique partnership, you need to find a different critique partner. Okay. And when it comes to beta readers, you don't necessarily want to change everything according to their wishes. Like if this person's saying one thing and that person's saying another and you're trying to please everyone, that's not going to work. What you're looking for with beta readers are general consensus points. If everyone's saying that this doesn't make sense, this portion of your chapter doesn't make sense, then that's something to pay attention to. But if they're all just nitpicking little things, those are things that you can probably overlook, right? It's just those, you're looking for main consensus problem areas from the beta readers. All right, moving on. So the eighth point that you should not overlook and should not do is publish without hiring an editor. Okay, so you may have written 20 books and feel that you are very confident in editing your own work by now, but I assure you, you are not, because even professional editors, when they write books, they too outsource to a professional editor because we all become too close to our material. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that we know what we want to say and we think what we have said makes complete sense, but it doesn't always. And sometimes there are errors, like when we're reading really quickly, we can overlook a missing word, we can overlook a typo, all those kinds of things. So having a professional editor, especially an editor who has manuscript experience, is worth its weight in gold and will help greatly reduce and minimize those errors and omissions that we were talking about at the beginning of the video. Okay, so the ninth thing you do not want to do when writing a book is design your own cover. Yes, you do not want to do that. Unless you are a professional designer who is writing a book about design, you probably don't want to design your own cover. There are many, many details that go into making a really good book cover. And there are some places that you can buy pre-made covers that sometimes work well, but make sure that they are professionally designed pre-made covers. Don't just use some basic template off of Canva. Don't just create, something on your own. Some people might buy their own like Adobe software, Photoshop software, so they can create their own. If you're just a beginning novice, I don't recommend that you create your own book cover. That's not to say that you can't, but an avid reader, especially in your particular genre, will be able to tell when there is a self-made cover versus a professionally designed cover. All right. Next, and finally, when you are writing your book, do not write alone. So this is where we surround ourselves with emotional support. So these are people who aren't necessarily writers. Maybe they are, but they are there and in our corner and supporting us and encouraging us and holding us accountable to meet those word counts or page goals that we have for ourselves in the writing process. It might be a trusted family member or a friend. It might be getting involved in a writing group. Um, Whatever it is, you need a support network to see you through the writing and self-publishing process. And if you are a Christian author, as I am, you really don't want to write alone. You want to invite God into your writing process daily, right? Um, it, he will provide you with the stamina that you need to get through those, times when we just want to throw in the towel, when the writing gets rough, right? And there are always moments that happens. And, people can support us in one way, but really the best support comes from God and knowing that we are writing in a way that's honoring Christ and is going to fulfill the purpose that God has for us, right? And remember too that there are readers waiting for our books, right? So we want to make sure that we have a support system in place so that we can meet that need that is out there in the marketplace. And I am a firm believer that there needs to be more Christian books in the marketplace, whether it's Christian business books, whether it's Christian fiction books, whatever genre you're writing, we need more books that offer biblical principles throughout. It's not a preachy type of writing. It's more of sharing how God has worked through you. It's sharing your testimony in the storyline or sharing biblical principles and how it applies to real life, right? And we can do that very seamlessly, but we can do it even easier when we invite God into the process. All right. So there you have it. 10 things you should not do when writing a book. I would love to know which one of those 10 things really was most helpful to you. Let me know in the comments. And also, after you're done doing that, I invite you to click on my community tab. I have a poll going over there, and I would love to get feedback about what type of book format you think is best. I really, really would love to get some perspective on that. I know I have a favorite format, and I would love to hear what yours is as well. So be sure to participate in that poll. Until next week, take care, God bless, and keep writing.